As I said earlier, we wrapped up our Family Matters series, and I hope that really helps you. All of it's on the internet. July 4th, I hope you guys had a good time with that. So I use that for some sermon editing. But I hope you guys got to see fireworks. I think there was like a lot of rain maybe in your area. It was mine there as well. So I thought to myself, well, those guys that did those rentals must have really been hurting. You can rent the pavilions at playgrounds, so they're very expensive. So I thought, man, that's going to be a bad day for them. But somehow people just figure they do fireworks at midnight and then some. I mean, fireworks go off to like 1, 2 o'clock. But that's that. But my thing was this: when we rolled up the Family Matters series, now I understand we're all been adopted, right? We talked about that, adoption. You ever think about this? If I said family is church and church is technically family, and you were adopted into God's family, did y'all hear that? You were adopted into God's family and church is family. Do you realize that God brought you here intentionally? Did y'all get that? I probably spun through it pretty quickly. We'll do it one more time. You were all adopted by God into His family. And if church is really our family, then you were brought here by God's adoption. Does that make sense? That clicked to me as I was rolling up the series these last few days in my mind and prayer. God was like, you know what? If I'm dad and these are my children, I bring them to a family and I place them there. That's why I think when it comes to church, it's very important that we prayerfully understand what church is. And that's why I say I'm excited about church. And I hope that you are too. I said that when y'all walked in. I hope you're excited about church because this is a family. I'm not saying it trumps your natural family that God gave you, but this is a family environment. We should be excited to see family. You ever see those people that walk in like this? Kind of like trudging, like I got up this morning. And it's sad because I don't think they understand. I'm not mad at them. I'm not upset with anybody. I just think they always understand that God's given you a family. He physically adopted you personally. He knows you. Each of you matter to God. And so, effectively, this is your family. He brought you here. Am I saying you have to be here? No. But I'm just saying if you can trust God to put you in a family, you can trust that He's good. You can trust that He's good. That's just what I wanted to say as we get started. But I want us to roll into this morning's message. It's going to be a completely different wavelength. And so for me, when it comes to Bible and sermons and teaching, you have kind of a general category of just biblical doctrine. Does that make sense? So I have a sermon ready. Some of it is just going to be doctrine, foundational teaching. Some of it may be history lessons, right? Like we studied Hezekiah, we studied Abraham, and all those guys. But every so often I get to kind of really stretch our spiritual muscles, if you want to say that. Guys like to stretch. Just me, okay. And so there's a sense where we get to really expand the strength that we have in God. And that's what this is. So I'm telling you, I'm really excited to do this message, to understand what it is to operate in God's power. If you know me very well, that's what gets me kind of away. That's my caffeine in the morning. It's just God's power. It just makes me excited that we aren't just weaklings in a world that doesn't care about us. We actually carry something very special that the world really doesn't have and money can't buy. And I really want to dedicate today and some of the coming messages to understanding this power that God's given us. And by the way, it's every one of you. It's not like, oh, it's just a ministry man or woman. Every one of us has it. And I've titled this morning, The Move of God. So that's what we're going to start with the next coming weeks, is understanding the move of God. See, very frankly, I'm going to show you this morning that all of you have encountered it in one way or another. Y'all ever had that encounter with God where God did something very special with you or through you or around you? It kind of goes right into your spiritual diary. Is it just me? You kind of email yourself or you write something down like, I just had this happen, or I prayed and this happened, or something very unique happened. And what I want to show you this morning is that's not a very one-time event. So it's not something that's just random, like, oh my gosh, once in a while I get that one bowling strike. Or bowl, you get the strike, get happy. Like, that's what believers sometimes feel like the power of God is. It's just like you get a strike and you're excited and that's it for the day. I don't think that's the way it was supposed to be. But I'm going to show you in Scripture that there's probably something much deeper to understanding the move of God. Is everybody okay with me? So I want us to dig deep into this. And again, what we're talking about is the move of God. If that was hard for you to understand, let's go into Matthew chapter 16. I think we're all going to get there. Matthew chapter 16. It's going to be verses 1 through 4. And I think you'll get on the same page and we'll get rolling. Matthew 16, 1 through 4. Thank you. Then the Pharisees and Sadducees came, and testing him, asked that he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said to them, when it is evening, you say, it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it'll be foul weather today, for the sky is red and threatening. Hypocrites! You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. And verse 4, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. And he left them and departed. Now, please, don't let the tone of this passage scare you away from a much deeper meaning. Is everybody okay why I said that? He was speaking to which group? Who are they? Pharisees and Sadducees. This was the religious leaders of that time. Did they accept Jesus and Messiah? No. If anything, what were they really doing? They're just testing him. Prove it to me that you're really the Son of God. So when you read this passage 1 through 4, if you want to put them all up on the screen for me, there's an aspect where it's almost as though God won't show a sign because of this verse. But I'll show you very clearly, friends. He's actually teaching you. He's going to teach you how to understand the move of God. But he starts by saying, you guys are asking me for something, but you really don't have the right to. I'd like to say that none of you guys are Pharisees or Sadducees. So first of all, you guys are family and ideally friends of God. So with that understanding, now that we've finished the family matters, let's kind of go back to this. Let's just say the children of God, or the friends of Jesus, said, Lord or Master, we would like to see a sign. What would he say? Read verse 2 now. He's answered and said to them, when it's evening, you say, it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And the morning will be foul weather, for the sky is red and threatening. Now, drop the hypocrites. You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you can't discern the signs of the times. Believe it or not, he's teaching you. Let me make it very clear. When somebody were to get up in the morning and they see a bunch of dark clouds overhead, they would say it's going to rain. If you see Michael's car has been washed, you can guarantee it's going to rain. It's just a fact of the matter. I can end a drought like that. It does not take a special skill. I can close a drought. Matter of fact, when you had all that rain, I washed both my cars. It rained for 3 days. You think I'm joking? I've got like 20 years of this, okay? So I think I got it. My point is this, friends. Jesus says there is a significant move before the move of God happens. I want to say it again. There is a sign that God is going to move before the move happens. I'm going to show you all in much greater detail, but I just want you to understand. God says there will be something that will signify that God is about to move. And he said, you guys don't even understand that. You understand in the natural realm, weather triggers something of an event. A cloud means it's going to rain, or it's going to be very hot if the sun's out and it's July. You know that. How come in the spirit you don't recognize that there can be a sign before God does something? Is that okay? And now that we've got that thought rolling, if I were to just stay in Matthew 16, what does he say? You guys don't believe I'm the Messiah. But what you will see is I'm going to what? I'm going to die, be crucified, be buried, disappear for 3 days, and be raised again. So he said, you asked me for a sign. Do you remember Jonah? That's a sign that God is about to move through Jesus in like manner. Jonah, of course, was in the whale for 3 days. So what I'm getting at is, you saw a physical sign. That means God will move in like fashion. You see a cloud, you know it's going to rain. I believe that many of you have dealt with the signs of God. You've asked God to move. You've asked God to do something. You saw a sign, but you did not interpret the sign. You didn't understand what God was doing. And so what was happening next was just over your head. And so many of us don't believe that we can get God to move. We don't believe that God will do something because God does something initially, and you come to that stopping point, and God says, okay, well, we're still at that stopping point. Is that okay? Now, I stepped outside of Matthew 16. Matthew 16 is purely a salvation sign. Is that the only sign in the Bible? Y'all think it's the only sign? So Matthew 16, 1 through 4 is purely the sign that Jesus would die and resurrect, disappear for 3 days into the darkness. But what I want to challenge this church is to understand the move of God on a higher level so that you are able to move with God. Is everybody okay now? I know that's a lot of talking, but we're going to be doing this for a few weeks, and so I need us to get the foundation 100% clear. But once I start rolling, we're going fast. So if you don't get this, I have to make sure you got it, okay? I hope you're right. So our teacher, again, the Master, Jesus Christ, is the best teacher you're ever going to see. But throughout Scripture, God has been teaching men and women on understanding how God moves so that when it's time to move, you can be a part of it. How many of y'all guys remember a man named Jeremiah? Who was he? A prophet. And what's very unique about this prophet, Jeremiah, in the Old Testament, he's one of the few men that we get to see his upbringing, right? His young years. His introduction of being a prophet. And what's very unique about Jeremiah as well, the book, is you can see his emotions. You can see his struggle. You get to see how he questions God. Sometimes people think, oh, being in ministry is all just, bunny rabbits and birthday cakes, for whatever reason. That's what I have. And so my thing is, he's not that simple. His life is extremely complicated. And even though you could quote, hear God, doesn't mean like everything just like, oh, it just flips on like a switch. But what's very unique about Jeremiah is not only do we get to see his calling, we get to see how God begins to teach him about what a sign is and how God moves. Let's do that together. Would you mind just reading for me? Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 11. And stop right there. Just verse 11. Jeremiah 1, verse 11. This is the very first chapter. We get to see that Jeremiah is a young man. Matter of fact, God comes to him and says, you're a prophet ordained to the nations. He goes, I'm just young. Like, I can't talk. And God said, listen, I didn't ask you about your age. I said, I just need you to say what I'm going to say. That's not the context. Here's the context. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? What did those Pharisees and Sadducees ask for? A sign from where? Heaven. What do you see? Is this a sign from heaven? It's a vision, right? This is a vision. A sign from heaven. He says, I see a branch of an almond tree. Again, I'm going to stretch y'all spiritually, but you can do this. Is that literal? No, but what is it? It's a sign. It's not literal, but it's a sign that God will move. When Jesus said the sky is red, and that meant it would be threatening for rain or clouds, or it's going to be hot in the morning, is that literally, does red mean it rains? Or does red mean it's going to be hot? He says, you know that there's a significance of a sign and a parable or some kind of translation, and yet you know there's a physical description to that. Does that make sense? You know for a dream and vision, even though the dream and vision is there is an answer behind that. So when he talks about a sign, he says, guys, you're asking God to move on a high level. If I show you I'm about to move, what I'm going to show you may not be what? Literal. Did y'all get that? When God's about to move on your behalf because you ask God to move, what he starts with may not be just, here's what's going to happen. He will show you something in some way that says, I'm about to do something. Is everybody okay with it? It doesn't mean it's literal. Now, God is teaching you through Jeremiah. How do I know God's teaching you? Look at verse 12. He said, did you see the branch? I saw the branch, sir. So go to verse 12. He says this. He says, then the Lord said to me, you have what? Seen, well, you saw my sign, for I am now ready to perform my word. What does a branch of an almond tree have to do with his word? It takes something of the Spirit, okay? That's all I'm asking you. He's teaching Jeremiah, he's teaching you, that when you ask God to move, he may show you something, and when you see it, he says what? You saw my sign. Good, I'm ready to act. Does everybody understand that? It's very important you understand. And you say, Michael, I'm not connecting with this. Do you think this comes in 5 seconds? Please. It takes time. It can even take a lifetime. But if you want to be the front minister, the front light of God, I'm telling you, you got to really get this. So God says, I will show you something that I'm about to move. Now, why is this so important? Why was it so important to Jeremiah or a young minister like y'all to understand why this is so critical? Would you mind going to verse 13? You're going to ask me to see why it's so important. Verse 13 says, just hold this for a sentence. The word of the Lord came to me the second time saying, what do you see? Hold that thought. What do you see? He's asking again. If you didn't understand that God moves through signs the first time, how do you get through the second role? Did you get that? This is a young man that God is training to become the prophet to the nations. Do you think that's a calling? Do you think that's like a small calling or this? I can't even measure the world, right? And he said, you're going to speak to people for generations for the rest of your life. And I got to start with something. That God will move very mightily through you, through what's called the move of God. And if you don't understand, I can start with a sign like this, you're not going to get very far. Now this poor Jeremiah has a throttle matched on him. You know why? What was the answer to the first vision? What sign do you see? I saw an almond tree. So you see well, for I'm what? What did he say? I'm ready to perform my word. The second vision was what? I see a boiling pot, and it is facing away from the north. Just wait. One sentence, right? What does that vision actually mean? Babylon is coming from the north to annihilate Jerusalem. And then God speaks for no less than 29 sentences. Y'all get that? One sign was one sentence. Another sign was the entire destruction of Jerusalem. You don't follow. It's very important you understand what I said. If you're asking for God to move and He shows you a simple sign, does that mean you have a simple move of God headed your way? No, you don't. And so, because Jeremiah's calling is global, he says, you have about 5 minutes to get this. Now, y'all don't have 5 minutes. This poor man had 5 minutes. He said he didn't have an easy life. It's like me grabbing my daughter saying, I'm going with you, you're going to be my apostle. And you have about 10 minutes to figure this out. Now, thank God you have more time than that. So the first thing he says, here's a bowl. What's that for? Cereal. Good. Here's a box. Let's go to the world. That's what he was given. This next vision is what? A boiling pot. He says, I'm now going to bring Babylon, and they're going to eradicate Jerusalem because they've been disobedient. Why is this important? Am I telling you to understand gloom and doom? No, I'm just showing you that in Scripture, God has been teaching people about how a sign signifies a move of God. Is it okay with that? I'm not saying every vision and dream and encounter you have means someone's going to die. I'm saying when God shows you something small, don't erase it. Don't write off that thought. Don't write off that dream or vision. Don't write off the Word of God that was quickened to you at that moment saying, well, that was weird. How many of y'all have heard that moment before? Where something happens to you like, huh? I wonder if God was talking. Man, let me go back to my pizza. But see, he has the luxury of, quote, hearing from God. We have the luxury of studying God's Word. I'm telling you, it's harder to just hear a sentence. It's easier to study this saying, God took this young man in the very first chapter, began to hammer. You need to know when I'm about to move. And before I move, I will give you a sign. I'm going to show you something's going to happen. What did Jesus tell those Pharisees? You ask me for a sign. You recognize a cloud means it's going to rain. But yet you don't understand, I can give you a sign like that? So I give him a sign. I'm going to teach him that. Now you guys say, Michael, I don't understand dreams and visions. Obviously we have a lot of weeks to cover. What I'm telling you is, you need to understand to see God move through your hands. It's a process. It's a study. But when you're done, you're going to become something amazing. Is that true? Do you think the mightiest men and women in the history of Christianity didn't understand how to make God move? You think they just got lucky? You think organizing a conference for 600,000 means, well, I guess God better show up? I think they got it. I think the greatest men and women in this universe understood what I'm trying to tell you. And when you begin to understand those things, you say, now I'm ready for more. But if you don't, you may just stay in Jeremiah 1. Does that make sense? You'll be just a young person. I'm not trashing you for that. I'm just saying, better to stay here in the closet with God than to go thrown out to the wolves. I hope this is making sense. Now, I would love to spend days on this, but I'm going to challenge you with this thought. Is this the only sign in your Bible? There's tons of them. Do y'all remember Jeremiah and his sash? You have to read Jeremiah to know the sash. But there's a story about a sash. He says, take a sash and hide it. It comes back, it's all worn down. He says, this is how good he is. You're saying, Michael, what are you talking about? Write down Jeremiah 13. He teaches them about a sign called the sash. Do you remember Gideon and his little carpet with the water? He wanted a sign. He's like, well, how can I fight the Midianites? Can I just throw it on this rug and water would only be around it? He still doesn't believe God, right? And he says, just make the rug dry. Remember that the rug wet? Because he had to fight the Midianites. He wanted a sign to see God move in the masses, in the multitudes. How about Ezekiel, chapter 4, the Hebrew Etch-a-Sketch? He takes a clay tablet and begins to draw whatever draw was about to happen. Y'all remember that? So you have to study these things. That's why some people, if you don't read your Bible, this won't work very well. So Ezekiel chapter 4, I called it Etch-a-Sketch. Nobody laughed. It's okay. I liked it. And so the idea is, whatever he drew was going to what? It was going to happen. He was told, go draw this. This city will be destroyed. It happened. So God has been showing signs to his people for thousands of years. And then people say, God, you won't move. He's like, just do this. I need to know you understand that I'm about to move. And when you understand, I'll move. How do you know that, Michael? I'm going to show you. Believe me, I got time. But I want to show you how to understand the move of God. But first, we hammered, the first key is what? That God uses a sign before he moves. Is everybody okay with that? Everybody okay with that? I want to make sure all of us understand that a sign means God will signify a great move. Now, how do you know the measure of that sign? You know, one sign can just be, hey, I'm ready. Another sign can be the destruction of an entire nation. Do y'all follow that? So the move of God is unlimited. That's a good thing. You begin to ask for healing. You get just a water drop, and you're like, wait, this is enough to heal the city. Did y'all get that? We need to think bigger. For some of us, we're so confined to our understanding and our circumstances that we don't think God thinks bigger. We begin to ask for something, and God says, I'm giving you the city. You begin to ask for salvation, God gives you a nation. That's what made these people different. But we're still playing in the sandbox. And we can't think bigger than our little world. And so it's incredibly important that if you want to be at this level, you have to let that sign expand everything you ever wanted. Beyond that, to the imagination of God. So I'm going to transition. I want to begin to show you how to use the sign of God. How do we respond to the sign of God? And you said, Michael, that was fast. I didn't say that you got it just because you heard me say it. I'm saying I'm opening your eyes to study Scripture, to say it's time for me to understand what a sign from God means. That's all my goal was. Okay? I didn't say that you're going to just flip out of here and start flying home like Superman. I wanted you to say, now I understand. There's something deeper to Scripture than just reading a history lesson on Jeremiah. Y'all remember the homework assignment I gave you last week? What was it? Exodus 33, verse 11. I told you about a man named Moses. Why? There are two people in the Old Testament called the friend of God. Abraham, Moses. And the homework was what? Tell me why he became friend. I'm not going to ask you if this was a closed study. I would love to hear your answer. But it'd be kind of weird to have all y'all chime in. So I'm going to give you the answer. But what really made Moses friend of God? First of all, let's go back. What did Abraham and Moses have in common? Who remembers what they really had in common except being Jewish? Because that's the cheap answer. What did they have in common?
They believe in God.
What's that?
They believe in God.
They believe in God. Go back a little bit. Did they know God?
No.
Did they come from Christian families? Was their dad a pastor? No. Matter of fact, they were both idol families. You don't think so? Who actually raised Moses? Egyptians. Did they have their own gods?
Yeah.
If you have a kid adopted in your family, which faith is he going to have? Your neighbor's faith? No, so he's actually a pagan worshiper. Well, was he poor? No, he's actually filthy rich, right? He's lavish. He's a prince of the Pharaoh. I don't think he's hurting. What did he do for God? Threw it all away. Greater love that no man have except to lay his life down for his friend. So here's a guy that threw away the richest, most prosperous. It says he was highly intelligent, extremely powerful. Threw it away. Threw away his family's faith. No small deal. What did God tell Abram in Genesis 12? Leave your family, land, nation, right? Leave it all. Did Moses do that? He was called the friend of God. Not really a hidden answer. But you think it's such a small thing to be friend, then study those two thoughts that I gave you and see what it is to be friend of God. It's a hard thing. And Moses left everything. Not only that, what was Moses' lifestyle? Was he out on the golf course being rich? No. I want to make a joke about planes, but I already did. Come on, you guys are on the box? He bought his own plane. I need money for a plane. Probably walked. And so my point is this, friends. Moses spent from pretty much all morning to all night with God, or doing God's work. It said a line was formed to come talk to him. He spent all day with God. I mean, literally didn't have a life. So, truth be told, this man was a friend of God. Now, why do I bring all that up? Was Moses a prophet?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I didn't think that was hard. Moses is actually a full-on prophet. Did God teach him about how to operate in signs and wonders? Yes, that's what we're talking about Moses for. I want us to show you. So Jeremiah, we got to see a lesson. And God also taught Moses about a sign, but then God also taught him how to respond to this sign. That's what we're going next, okay? So that was a big transition. I hope I didn't lose y'all. I really need your mind engaged with me on this one. We understood what the purpose of a sign is, that God would move. And what's very unique about Moses, we get to see how not only does God show Moses a sign, now we must Respond to that sign. And when you respond to the sign, what do you get? What's the title of the message?
The move of
The
God.
move of God. Thank you. Somebody. When you respond to the sign, the move of God will occur. This is why the church isn't seeing the move of God. Did I hurt your feelings? Who are listening to me outside? I'm telling you, friends, when the church says, where is the move of God? I would tell you, the sign is given and no one responds. And when no one responds, God's like, well, I guess you didn't hear me. Right? Is it fair to say that maybe our Xbox is too loud? Maybe our TV is too loud. Maybe our YouTube is too loud. So we can't hear the sign. Like, oh, I don't know what that was. And then we just go back to our merry way, and thus nothing happens. And so I think it's very imperative that when we open Moses, we don't overlook who is Moses. I told you. He's a man that gave up everything for God. And so he was very much known for signs. I think they're one and the same. I don't think you get the luxury of just being worldly Joe and get to be superstar. I think you have to be God's man or God's woman, and then these things are important. These things are available, which is why I gave you the message last week about being God's friend. Does that make sense? That's a lot of words. Let me say it again. Don't come and talk to me about the signs and power of God if you won't be what? God's friend. So how do you be God's friend? We talked about God's family. Is this really Michael? No, this is clearly God's wisdom. Don't even think I have that kind of wisdom. God introduced family. God introduced friends. And to those whose friends are, they get to operate in what? God's power. I hope that made sense. That was God, not me. So, Moses' story, at least his calling, picks up ultimately in Exodus chapter 3. Okay, now of course Exodus starts the story of Egypt and the torment of the Jews. Does everybody remember the story of Exodus? After Joseph moves all of Jacob's family, the nation Israel, into Egypt, they were good with him, right? And then the new Pharaoh arises that didn't know the Jewish people, the Israelites, and they begin to get what? Very jealous about their prosperity and the multiplication. And they say, you know what? This is becoming a problem. They may take over. Let's what? Enslave them, beat them, starve them, and even destroy their own children. And so God brings up a man named Moses. And the calling of Moses we studied about years ago in great detail. And so I would encourage you, if you guys are curious about Moses, to go and listen to those 3 messages. But I'm going to pull some of the notes from that. But I'm going to assume that you know who Moses is and his value. When God calls Moses and sends him to Pharaoh, did he say he would just comply immediately? Did he say that when you talk to him, it's going to go well? Did he say, oh, he'll give you back what he stole just because you asked him? Now listen to me very carefully. Okay. Why is Christianity and the church and believers like you and me so shocked that evil happens? Why are we so surprised if we pray until the devil let go that he doesn't? Why do you think that your words are going to turn the devil's heart when God told Moses he won't listen to you? Did you all hear that? And yet Christianity is like, I don't know what God's doing. God gave a sign to Moses. You're going to go get back what they stole from you. But he ain't going to listen. You're going to need something more than words. You're going to need power. Did y'all get that? You need to understand the move of God. Or Moses or Pharaoh will see like, so what? So God spoke to you? Whoop-de-doo. I've heard God talk too. I was in heaven before you. That's the Pharaoh. Do y'all understand me? That's why this message is no ordinary message. When you go to confront somebody of great authority, which the devil has his own power, I'm not trying to brag about him, and you go, hey, need you to go ahead and, give me back my brother, he's lost. He goes, get lost. You think your words are going to convince a devil to obey you? I'm not talking about Jesus, I'm talking about your words. You think you're going to convince him? Do you think Jesus had power? They knew that. That's why when he talked, they said, oh, bro, forget that. Just take it and go. Take the ice cream truck. You can have it all. It's a joke. And my point is this, friends. Some of us say, I can't believe the prayer didn't work. I can't believe that didn't happen. I can't believe this didn't change. And you're coming up to your situation with your mouth. Like somehow your boss was supposed to lose sleep about you and something that happened to you. Does it make sense? How a good boss cares. I'm talking about the devil here. Somebody who's a boss over something. Somebody who has authority, dominion in a dark realm. And God told Moses, here's the sign. I'm going to harden his heart. And you're going to have to learn the move of God. Did y'all get that? Did God teach that to Moses before or after? Before. That was interesting. Oh, y'all like it? It's good. Did y'all get that? Did God tell Moses, hey, I'm going to send you there, but he's going to be hard? Yes. Would you mind reading for me Exodus 3? Again, Exodus 3 is a calling. I wish I could spend 4 hours on this, but we'll keep going. Exodus chapter 3, please, verse 19. I am sure that the king of Egypt, that's Pharaoh, will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. That means you grab these guys and say, please, let it go, let it go. They don't care. He says, I don't give a flip. I'm not trying to be rude or like arrogant with you. I'm just trying to help you understand. Some of you are in some challenges that you think keep talking is going to change it. It ain't going to change, my friend. He said, even if you had a mighty hand, which means strength, some kind of threat behind you. Oh, I got the course. I got police. I got this. He's the devil. He ain't going to change his mind with you. Do y'all see that? Everybody see that? Do y'all understand the context? So read the next verse. So what does God say? I need you to understand what? Verse 20. I will stretch out what? My hand. Would you replace that? The move of God. So I will conduct the move of God. I will stretch my hand. That's called the move of God. When God brings his hand out, you know it's game over, dude, for the devil. It's a good win for us. I love it when God's hand moves. My question was to you, not whether God will move his hand. How do you understand that? Now, in the coming weeks, I want to show you how to move that hand. But I want you to understand up here what it means for God's hand to move. What was the sign? The devil told me no. That's the sign. The next step is the what? The move of God. Can I get that again? Remember I said, first of all, Jeremiah had to understand there are signs in this world. There are visions, there are dreams, there are even demons. I had a nightmare. Okay, good. Now, how do we respond to that sign? Do we tell the nightmare, no more nightmares? We need something within us, a strength of God that says, that's as far as you go. That's your last day. Goodbye. Did you understand that? And so when people say, I pray, good, stay in prayer. But I'm asking you to pray in this way. I've tried to tell the men's meeting for years. One sermon is not the cure for cancer. The Bible is the cure for cancer. So if you go, Michael, this isn't the only answer. I know that. This is one of many answers that I'm trying to equip you as a Batman tool belt so you have multiple moves. Y'all get that? Okay, that's why I recorded it. So again, he says, I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, which I'll do in its midst. And after that, you'll have what you asked for. Did you get that? So some of you know about ask God for a miracle. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. I'm not trying to question your doubt. I'm not trying to say God ignored your prayer. I'm just preaching to you Exodus chapter 3. Is that okay? I'm preaching to you Exodus chapter 3 where God said, listen, you're going to go to the devil. You're going to ask him to free the people of God. And he'll say, what? No. Why does he have the right? That's a separate discussion. But clearly he has some right to say no because they didn't get up to leave. But he said, if God's hand can move, you got what you want. Trust me, friends. I've already been down this road. This is what you want. Just take my word for it. This is what you're looking for. I've just been through more roads than you guys can count. It's one of those deals where you can beat your head against the wall and you say, how do I get God to move? And the sooner you ask that, the sooner you're on the right road. This is not the only time God says that. Would you mind reading Exodus chapter 7, verse 3? Exodus chapter 7, verse 3 is going to say the exact same thing. And you will see the same message repeated throughout Exodus over and over and over. Here you go. Thank you. I will what? Harden Pharaoh's heart. That's a sign. And in response, he will multiply his signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. So because there was a resistance to your prayer, because something God commanded you did not operate, God says, now it's time for my power to operate. Is that okay? On understanding how the move of God works. So that you realize every one of you are not ordinary believers. I started this way. I said, you know, you guys have the power of God available to you. But the question is not knowing if it's there or not. It's saying, how do I use this power? How do I pick up Goliath's sword if it's too heavy? There must be something I can do. And that's what I want to show you. All right. Everybody okay so far? I'm giving you a 5-second mental break. Good. 5 seconds is up. I don't have time to read to you every story from Exodus 7. I'm asking you to read Exodus 7. Okay? Exodus 7 is the signs and wonders that Moses was given. The very first sign that Moses and Aaron show the Egyptians is they take a rod, they throw it down, and it becomes what? A snake. Does it all go, wow, you pray in tongues. We're going home. The Pentecostals are really big on tongues. They think they got it. God bless them. We all started somewhere. And so these guys start praying in tongues back, and they throw their rod down, and it becomes a snake. Of course, Aaron's snake eats the other snake. Does that change Pharaoh's mind? No. And then God does something very powerful. He says, I want you to take that same rod, and you're going to turn all that water to blood. Did y'all get that? So when someone starts competing with you spiritually in a dark way, you begin to do something you've never done before. Is that okay? That is a sign for the move of God. God, there was a resistance. It's time to go higher. How many signs does God unload on Egypt through Moses? 10. Same confidence. 10. How many times have you fought the devil with 10 different ways? That's my question. How many times have you punched something and it didn't work and said, okay, now I'm going to give it the Chuck Norris roundhouse? That's the end of every fight, by the way. I mean, seriously. I mean, you give it the roundhouse, it's game over. And, I mean, or the Hulk Hogan leg drop. I mean, it beat Andre the Giant. Okay, these are work stories. It's very critical wrestling discussion at work. And so my point is this, friend. I try to tell people privately, and I'm telling you publicly. When you find a challenge spiritually, don't just say God didn't operate. Say it's time for me to learn something new. Did y'all get that? But you say, well, Michael, God told him, oh, remember the rod, the water, and the chest thing, the leprosy sign? Those aren't the only 3 he used. He used 7 more, right? He didn't use leprosy one, but he used other ones. Did God tell him I'm going to kill the firstborn? At some point he did. Did God tell him about the fleas and the lice and the pest sprays? I'm just saying, friends, there was more coming. And some of you don't believe the power of God can come through you because you're limited. You have a sign. Okay, well, God said do this. This is as far as I go. But if you were going to say, there's a greater wonder than this. There's a greater power within me. There's something that's going to bring me beyond this. And I don't think it's going to take you 10 trials with the devil. I really don't. This is just to learn. Is everybody okay with that? We're just learning from Moses how to confront a spiritual resistance and to have God move. Now, I know there's all the good stories too about healing. We're going to come to that. But I'm just trying to show you that God took Jeremiah's hand, He took Ezekiel's hand, He took Isaiah's hand, He took Moses' hand, and He's going to take your hand too. And He wants to show you how these signs work. I hope this is making sense. You want to do an application study? Do you know what application study means? It means I want to take everything we've discussed and we're going to try it out. Okay? That's recorded for this reason. Exodus chapter 14, just write down Exodus chapter 14, starts in this way. He tells Moses, I want you to move the entire nation of Israel over here by this body of water. That's it. Does Moses know what's going to happen yet? No. Do the people of Israel know what's going to happen? No. And he says, I'm going to go get Pharaoh and I'm going to show him I'm God. That's all he's got. Right? That's all he's got. He doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what that looks like. It's a sign. The sign was this. Get this church and plant them on the end of a cliff. And then go get a bunch of angry people and push them off. What am I supposed to do with that? And so read this, Exodus 14, verse 11 through 12. Exodus 14, 11 through 12. Having seen the nation of Egypt coming their way, by the way, the entire nation, which they didn't know was coming, they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Y'all see that? You know what they thought? God won't move. You know Moses' response? God will move. Now, he didn't know what was going to happen, friend. I'm talking about application here. Did Moses know exactly that God would split the Red Sea? No. But having seen the entire nation of Egypt barreling towards the entire nation of Israel, he said one thing. God has to move. Y'all get that? Listen to verse 13 and 14. Moses said to the people, don't be afraid. Exodus, I'm just giving you the verses. Read 11 through 14 on your own. Verse 13, it says, don't be afraid of the people. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which He will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall see again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. It doesn't say what's going to happen. You read Exodus 14, he doesn't know. All he knows is There is a sign. This devil is coming to maraud me. God's arm will move. Has there been any story about a Red Sea crossing up till now? Does he have Abraham, his friend, to check out with? Isaac? Jacob? Noah? That was a flood. Like, that's bad news. That's probably not a good story right now. So what I'm getting at is this, friends. There's no reference. All these guys what? God has been delivering his people through signs and power for how many times now? As much has been needed. And as many times as been needed. Why would God stop now? So he said, just look at him and say, I'll never see you again. That's the power of a minister. That's the power of the believer. That is the power of the move of God. And when the move of God happens, the Red Sea opens. Something that's never been recorded since and after. And what happens to Egypt? Completely decimated. That's the power of God. Does that make sense? Is all that making sense yet? And so, the application study is this, friends. Moses had no point of how to say, don't be afraid. The only thing he knew was, God will destroy them. He didn't know how. He didn't know what. But he said, God will move. What was the sign? God told him, I want you to park your people in this church. I'm going to take a bunch of people you never met, and they're going to become great. And Michael says, okay, I'll start the church. Does that make sense? You go, Michael, what qualifies them to be so good to you? I don't know. I bring donuts? That's all I got. But I know something else. That the same God who delivered me from being a completely lost man and made me who I am can do the same thing to y'all. And that's what I got. That's what I got. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us special to God. That's why we are called a peculiar, special people reserved unto himself. Because you're not ordinary. You can't be. Because God won't let you be ordinary. I got a few minutes, and we're going to try to tie this up. There are 3 areas which you should see God move in your life. I'm not saying you're going to understand how to do it yet. I just want to give you 3 areas as we close this out. We'll transition next week. 3 areas that you should see God move. Every one of you has a great need in your life. Every one of you. You want God's hand to move. Does that make sense? You don't need to say, well, God, is he going to answer me? Is God going to move on my behalf? You need to understand that God will move. Every one of us has something in our life that is pushing us, pulling us apart, trying us out, and we don't know what to do. I'm telling you, that area in your life is ready for a move of God. That area in your life is ready for a move of God. The second area, many of us have probably heard these things and dealt with it. When suddenly a tragedy comes your way, you get a phone call, you get an email, you get a note. So such and such is hurt. Such and such is in pain. Such and such has just lost their job or their finances or divorce or kids missing or sickness or something. Does it make sense? When suddenly something is brought to your attention and is of no value to you other than a great loss, you need a move of God. Does it make sense? You know Jesus did with these things every day of the week? This was the life of Jesus Christ. He had a need, the salvation of the world. And every day he was dealing with problems. Did he say, I don't know if God's going to move? No. The sign for him was what? Hey, my son's sick. That's enough. Did you hear that? My son's sick. That's enough. I got my son. God has to move. You want to know how these guys operated at such a high level. They, like Moses, like Abraham, like Daniel, like David, all these men, Gideon, saw so much of God, they said, the minute there's a need, that's my sign. And you say, my God, how is that a sign? You know it's going to rain if there's a cloud. Why do you think God won't rain his blessing on the dark hours of your life? Right? Why would God not do it? Third area. We'll cover these in the future weeks. Third area. There are systems and situations in of themselves that are just crying for God. Doesn't mean it's related to you. Doesn't mean it's personal to you. Doesn't even mean it's your need. There are situations that are just desperately crying out for God. I bet you can list a few. Abortion is desperately crying out for God. It needs the move of God. Do you know what Trump is after with the Supreme Court? Somebody's praying. People are very upset that Trump is after abortion with the Supreme Court change. There are situations that are begging for God's need, right? Trafficking, drugs, so many things that just need the move of God. And there are some believers and churches and ministries dedicated to it, and God bless them for that. We don't want to be so immune to the world that we're so boxed up in our own thoughts. But there are situations that just needs God. Why do I need to pray? It just needs God. If you want the answer to everything I just told you, John 3:17 is written this way. John 3:17 says this. For God did not send His Son into the world to what? Condemn it. But through the world, through Him might be saved. So we got a lot talking. We got a lot talking to do about this. The greatest move of God was what? He sent His Son. The greatest sign you will ever see is Jesus Christ. So when you go back to Matthew 16, that sign from heaven, when they said, Master, we would see something. Do you mind putting that? Matthew 16, 1 through 4. It says, the Pharisees and Sadducees came and tested Him, asking Him, show me a sign from heaven. Stop there. Who's the sign? Jesus. That means the move of God is ready. Isn't it? Isn't the move of God already ready for you? Didn't they already ask? Weren't the Jews waiting for the Messiah? Then the sign is ready. That means what happens next. The move of God. That's it. Let's stand up. Mark 16 says this. These signs shall what? Follow those who believe.